All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nature Unplugged podcast with me, your host, Sebastian Sylvan. And I'm so excited today to have with us Michelle Abbey. Michelle, welcome to the program. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I want to start, I'm super excited. We're going to talk about all the wonderful work you do, forest therapy, forest bathing, your nutrition stuff. I think there's lots of good stuff here. But to begin, I want to read your bio just so everyone has the sense of who you are, and we'll get into your background a little more. So Michelle's a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and South Louisiana native. She and her husband now live in Bend, Oregon. Michelle works with individuals and organizations looking for ways to improve health and well-being through nutrition, movement, nature, and connection. Her services include one-on-one nutrition and well-being coaching, group coaching, challenges, corporate wellness services, medical nutrition therapy, and nutrition planning for fitness and endurance events. Michelle's also a certified forest therapy guide through ANFT. As a guide, she leads individuals and groups into nature to experience a deep sensory connection to the natural world and ultimately themselves. Her passion for this work stems from her own deep love and connection to the outdoors. And in her free time, she can be found cooking, doing something fun outdoors, reading about nutrition, nature, or psychology, hiking, trail running, or planning the next outdoor adventure with her husband, Derek. Awesome bio. Derek, who I know, and Sonia and I know well through our education at University of San Diego. We'd love to have Derek on too at some point down the line. But anyway, awesome bio. And I thought we could start with just hearing a little bit about your background, like, where you grew up and how you got into connecting with nature when you were a kid.
Sure. So I grew up South Louisiana, and my first memories of being outdoors and really loving the outdoors, I was around 8 years old, and my stepmom had a small little horse farm, and there's about 8 acres, I think. And as a little kid, that was just huge to me. And I just remember running around out there, playing with horses, swimming around in ditches and covering myself in mud, and just having such a fun time out there. And yeah, it was great. I remember, I started my own club, the Nature Kids.
You did?
Yeah, I do. I vaguely remember that. It's pretty funny. I think I was the only one in the club, but it was fun. And and then I grew up a little, and we moved to a different part of Louisiana. And then I remember as a teenager, my dad had a 40-acre piece of property, and he planted a big garden, and we were raising some cows. And so I guess that was kind of like my second portion of being connected to the land. And I probably took it for granted, and having all that amazing property to run around as a teenager. And then I think in college and my young adult life, though, I kind of got pulled away a little bit from it. And it wasn't until, just a few years ago. I moved to San Diego, which that got me outdoors a lot more. And at first it was very focused on sports, so triathlon, running, things like that. Nature was a little bit more my background for, my exercise, which was great. But, the connection wasn't quite as strong as it is. And it wasn't until a few years ago, actually, as I entered my dietitian career, that I started to look into forest therapy, forest bathing. It just started popping up on my radar everywhere, and I found this wonderful program through Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Programs that actually certified people to lead groups out in nature for connection walks, which is pretty awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah. Well, so it sounds like you're right. You had this deeply rich connection with nature as a child and a youngster, and then that kind of faded away. Like, was there some fade away, like in your maybe after college? Is that right?
During and after.
During college. Right. Yeah. And then was there something that really like brought you back into wanting to like focus your life more around it? Was it through sports or something different?
I think it was, moving to San Diego and having that opportunity to be outside all the time. It was a slow relationship. And, again, it started with all the training I did outdoors. And I actually started working with the San Diego Museum of Natural History, and I went through a program where they kind of put us through this like naturalist type education for 10 weeks, and I
Oh,
led
cool.
hikes for the museum. And it was amazing, and that group was amazing. I learned so much, and I think it was after that program that I was considering the forest therapy training. And after that program, I was like, oh, I have to do it, because it's like I got that much more connected to nature. And then doing the forest therapy program, it was even more like I kept slowing down a little bit more, a little bit more. And I thought I couldn't slow down anymore. And I found out that I could. Like, wow. So, trying to run right now outside is really funny because I stop a lot to look at things.
Yeah. And by slowing down, just to clarify, you mean like noticing what's around you and all that stuff,
Absolutely.
which will,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, okay, got it. So there was this sort of, you had that opportunity with the San Diego Natural History Museum, that kind of sort of was the origin for some of this deeper training. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about, what that, like a little bit more about maybe the organization, ANFT, and like what the training was like and
Yes.
how that went.
Sure. Yeah. So the organization was founded by Amos Clifford, and he was a psychotherapist by trade, and also did a lot of vision quest guiding. And
Got it.
he noticed that in his work there, doing these vision quests and vision fasts, that a lot of great work was being done within people's souls, and connecting with themselves. And he was like, man, I'd love to be able to bring this somehow out to the general public, make it more accessible. He knew very well that most people wouldn't want to go out for 12 days and, be out there for 4 days with no food or shelter or human
Right.
contact. Like that doesn't sound fun to many people. But maybe if he could
Yeah.
bring some, sort of condensed version of
Right.
that to the public. And, and he started studying the forest bathing and came up with a standard sequence that we use through their program. And it's about 2 to 3 hours long. Makes it much more accessible to everyone.
Right.
And he also has this dream of getting forest therapy walks integrated into preventative medicine, because in places like Japan, where forest bathing originated, and in Korea, it's very medically focused, the
Yeah.
walk. And they do a lot of testing, and blood pressure, heart rate, even blood testing and that kind of thing. And he would love to be able to get it covered by insurance and just really make it part of the system here. And he asked someone once, and I think he was given the advice, well, if you want that to happen, the first thing you need to do is train guides that are going to be available, all over the United States. And so that's what he set out to do, and that is what he's doing. And he's moved into places like Costa Rica and places in Europe, so becoming much more worldwide now with their organization.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really cool. And for listeners or people who haven't heard of it before, could you just share a little bit about like what forest bathing is? I know we kind of use it. Sounds like forest therapy and forest bathing sort of interchangeably, but what is forest bathing, and like where did it come from? A little
Yeah.
background on that would be great.
Yeah, so in the 1980s in Japan, they were experiencing this, big tech boom, and at the same time, they were starting to notice an increase in chronic disease and illness. So both of these things are happening at the same time, and they're trying to figure out, what the problem is and what might be able to help. And one of the things they poured some money into was researching what taking people outside might do for them health wise. And they found that it was very helpful. Um,
Shocker, shocker.
yeah,
No, just
right.
kidding.
Both
That's cool.
physically,
Yeah.
both physically and mentally. And one of the things that they did find was, there were actual chemicals emitted by the trees in these forests that we breathe in, phytoncides, and when we breathe them in, they actually help to boost our immune system. And there was this one study that showed that being out in nature, I think it was like they were out there for like 3 days, their T cell count, natural killer cell count, increased by 50%. And that
Wow.
yeah, and that stayed around for a while. Like it wasn't just like a really small change and then it went away. It stuck around for a while. So they're like, okay, maybe there's something to being in nature that's helpful for our health.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then they started, taking people out and taking them on walks and, doing all the testing afterwards. And it was really helpful. So yeah,
Yeah.
the quick story on
That's
that.
great. Yeah. And was it originally, from your understanding, like a 3-day kind of endeavor, or was it just like kind of a little outing? I know we'll get into more like what you do. It sounds like it's like shorter outings, like 2 or 3 hours. But
Mhm.
was it forest bathing originally like a longer process, or it
No,
just
I
depends
think
on?
yeah, I think it was. I'm sure there was all kinds of different times, but I think most
Got
of
it.
them were something you can do in a day that they would
Got it.
put on.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's so interesting because when I think about, Japan and Korea, I haven't spent a ton of time there, but just the contrast, right? Like the just how intense the city is, like Tokyo and places like that, and then there's that, and then there's like the serene, wilderness and volcanoes and stuff like that, and it's just kind of it's cool that it originated there because I think that like there's
Yeah.
it's like seems such like extremes, but I'm really fascinated about it and about the work you do because it's a you don't have to go somewhere super far away or for 3 days to get these benefits. It sounds like a few hours can be hugely helpful. So yeah, I'd love to hear about like how does it look or what is it like when you lead your forest therapy walks?
Sure. The biggest thing that we focus on with our walks is that everything is very open for interpretation.
Yeah.
One of the things we tell participants is whatever you do, when you hear my invitation, that's exactly what you need to do. So don't worry about doing things the right way or the wrong way. Whatever your body says you need to do at this time, that's exactly what you should be doing. It may not be what the next person's doing. That's okay because you're doing what you're doing. And our really important job is to just create that space and hold that space for people to feel safe, and to feel open to really fully experiencing the walk. And so we'll start off usually, with an introduction, kind of give everybody the lay of the land and what to expect. And if there's anything to watch out for, if you're in a place with poison oak, we'll let people know that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
try not to do any walks around poison oak, but
But it's
and
around.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then the first thing we do is we spend some time really getting people in touch with their senses. So just going through your senses of smell and hearing and taste and touch, and then finishing off with sight, and really giving people some time to slow down and get into that and get comfortable with it. And then after that, we go on a slow wander where people are, moving pretty slowly, but still just kind of falling into that more being, less doing mentality
Hmm.
and just noticing the world around you. And we follow that with a few invitations. So usually 3 of them, and invitations can be a lot of different things. So everything from, just noticing the sounds around you, to, interacting with the water if you're by a creek or a river, making friends with a tree.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I say that and I laugh because there's definitely people who come to the walk and say, I'm not hugging a tree today. But it's so awesome to see how by the end of the walk that same person is very much making friends with a tree. so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's funny how the perspective shifts, and
Right.
that's what I love about these walks too, it doesn't increase perspective, it shifts perspective, and opens people's minds to different possibilities. And I think that's huge, especially in this day and age, because a lot of us are losing that creative muscle, that imaginative muscle, because of just the humdrum of our daily lives. So I
Right.
think that's a really important part of the walks that we do. And then after the invitations, we close it out with a traditional tea ceremony and snacks. And so it kind of brings everything together in the end. And then after we have our tea, it kind of opens up the floor for people to just kind of get back to normal and talk about things, and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Well, I probably would have been good to start with this, but Sonia and I, you were very kind to invite us on a forest therapy walk. I think when you're like, this is several years ago now, but in San Diego, and it was such a cool experience. And, I think you did a great job of describing it, but, even for folks who like us, who get out quite a bit, or nature's an important part of our life. I think there was just that process of really slowing down and really engaging the senses was such a cool thing to do. And again, doesn't have to be, a 3-day backpacking trip to get that experience. I think that's what's so cool about it, is that this stuff is available. You just need some sort of a green, some trees, some green space. It's really awesome. Yeah, I'm really into it. And so now you're in Bend. I think one of the challenges with San Diego is that there's not as much of that, but you're in Bend. Yeah, what are your plans with doing forest therapy walks up north?
Yeah. I say for me specifically, it was one of the major reasons I wanted to move to Bend, is just to
Yeah,
be have that easier access to the outdoors. It's like, yeah, look out my window now and there's pine trees, ponderosas everywhere. Just
yeah,
across the street from our neighborhood is a huge piece of land with just a bunch of trees. So it's, I can go connect right across the street. I mean, really, I could go into my backyard if I wanted to, even though we're in a pretty dense neighborhood. The way they developed it was smart. And
yeah,
so the plan here is just to connect with organizations, is what I'd really love to do, and lead walks for organizations. Right now, I actually have plans. There's a veterans organization that I've gotten approval to do a walk for them. So hopefully sometime soon we'll schedule something.
yeah,
Also love to work with organizations in developing, maybe multi-day programs that involve these walks. So hopefully that happens soon. But yeah, working with organizations to do walks for their members or employees is something that I really enjoy.
yeah. And I was going to ask this earlier. Is there any particular populations, that it sounds like, the corporate place is a really good place to go, but you know, I guess, is there anyone this wouldn't work for? Is it kind of open to all groups, or anyone in particular that this is better for?
I can't imagine anyone that this is not good for, and that's another
Yeah,
thing I love about it. And
right.
like you said, just even the people who are like, I'm in nature all the time. It's just it's different. It's a different connection. It's so focused, and just helps people to see a lot of things that they don't normally see. And I actually did my first walk this summer with a family, so it was
Oh,
my first
cool.
walk with kids. I was terrified because I don't normally work with kids, and so I didn't
Oh,
know what
got
to
it.
expect.
It just cut
And
out
there
for a
were
second. So it
three
was
boys. Oh yeah,
kids. Oh, kids. Yeah, yeah. So
kids.
just wanted,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, got it.
and I was terrified because I wanted them to like it.
Right.
Um, and it was three boys and their parents, and they were just so cute. They were in ages from 3 to 8, I believe it was. And so a lot different what the 3-year-old was doing and what the 8-year-old was doing and what they were interested in. But they loved it, and I loved it. We all had a great time. We all learned from each other. You kind of in that situation, you learn very quickly to kind of let the kids lead the walk a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and,
yeah.
and again, it was awesome. They were great teachers because their minds are, where we're trying to get our minds to when we do these walks. I think in a big way.
Totally. Yeah, I was going to say there's something really, I think, intuitive and childlike about a lot of the invitations or the process, where it's really just kind of getting out of that like to-do list thinking mind and stepping more into being. And yeah,
Correct.
and kids are great, and creativity and
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. That's great. I wanted to ask about, I know you have great experience and skills with your nutrition and cooking and all that stuff. Like, how does, I guess, your relationship with nature, um, connect with your love for nutrition and cooking and all that?
Yeah. Well, I love thinking about it in the sense, and I'll give my husband credit for this tagline, doing everything that involves what you put in your body and where you put your body. So,
Yeah,
so what you put in your body, the food you eat, where you put your body, hopefully nature.
yeah,
And, it's all very, from nature,
yeah,
very very basic. And we've made things very complex in our life, and if you just kind of like dial things back to where the beginning is, then I think that's really important. You know, we're wired. You always hear that saying that we're wired for connection.
Hmm.
Well, I think we're also wired for connection to nature, which is our
Yeah.
original home. You know, so
Right.
my focus is getting people back to that, and then as far as food, getting people back to eating food as close to the ground as they possibly can. And I think those two things are very related and go hand in hand. You shouldn't focus on one without the other, really, if you want to have a well-rounded, healthy life. So
Yeah, I love it. And by eating close to the ground, meaning like whole foods, things that you can recognize, that
right,
kind of things. That
whether it's growing from the ground or walking on the ground, or all
yeah,
those things.
got it. I love it. That's great. Um, cool. Well, I think that, I mean, that's awesome stuff. I guess like if people are interested in doing a forest therapy walk, what do you recommend? Is there like a website, or you have like a website
Mhm.
to go to? What's the best way to get in touch about information?
Well, if you're in Bend or you want to fly me somewhere, you can go to, you can go to my
Yeah, put it out
website.
there.
You can go to my website, thenaturenutritionist.com. If you're somewhere else besides Bend, the ANFT, the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Programs, has a website, and they have a locator that shows where all their guides are around this country and other countries. So you might be able to find someone that's guiding close to you.
Awesome, awesome. And before I forget, I wanted to ask. I know you're doing some work now with, this is a little bit of a shift, but with the Central Oregon Veterans Ranch. I wanted to see, like, just share a little bit about what you're doing with them, and what that work's all about.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Derek and I got connected to them over the summer. And so what they do is they're a 19-acre property, and they are there for veterans to come out and to get involved with working the land, agriculture, community bonding, that kind of thing. And one of the projects they had this summer was a community garden. So,
Mm.
any veteran could come out there and grab themselves a plot. And Derek knows how much I've been wanting to grow plants. So he's like, all right, here's
Yeah,
a chance. And we went out there, and it was amazing. And, we got to meet a lot of really cool people. And I love their mission. The ultimate mission of the organization is to open a foster home of sorts for end of life care for veterans, specifically combat veterans with PTS. And there's kind of a healing component to that. So pairing that generation with the younger generation of veterans,
yeah,
and having them really just kind of heal through connecting with each other. And there's other healing that happens in the ranch, just working the land, getting your hands in the dirt, that kind of
right.
agriculture therapy, and giving these guys and women a place to go that's peaceful and safe. And so I love the community aspect of the ranch. I love that it has to do with two of my favorite loves, nature and food. uh,
Yeah,
so all of it just really falls in line with my values. So I'm going to be working with them, trying to do some fundraising and outreach, and that sort of thing. And it's a very new opportunity, so we'll see where it goes.
that's really exciting. And I think important to point out, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Derek, your husband, is a veteran, combat veteran.
Correct.
And so, yeah, hence the veteran connection.
Mhm.
Um, cool. That sounds really exciting. Yeah, maybe we can, have you back on once, in a little bit, and see how that's going.
That
Get
would be
some
great.
updates. Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear. One thing we want to give our listeners is some tangible tips to put into practice right away. And I think we've already talked about a lot of cool ways to put this into practice. But do you have any, like, one recommendation or even a challenge to our listeners who are maybe interested? It can be around nutrition or forest therapy or getting into nature, that you could recommend.
So and I'll make it simple.
Yeah,
And,
that's great.
and it's some things that are simple, but you're like, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense. So for as far as getting outdoors, I would challenge people to engage with your senses in the outdoors, because even things like touch, when you think about it, I mean, maybe not all of us, but I feel like a lot of us don't go out in nature and touch trees and the dirt and take your shoes off and walk barefoot somewhere
Right.
outside. Like, it's not something we do very often. So doing that and really, really, taking that in and feeling what that feels like and how that makes you feel. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it, but you're learning something either way.
Yeah.
So, listening, using your sense of smell. So I would definitely challenge people to do that, and to do that, to also, be still when you do it, not trying to do it while you're walking or while you're doing something else, like
Right.
just do that.
Right.
And as far as nutrition, I kind of want to stay on the same kind of idea in noticing. So, notice what your hunger feels like. Notice, slow down when you're eating and taste your food. And, notice the textures. Because when we do that, when we notice more of what we're eating, our brain actually gets more of the signal that we're eating and that we're getting full. And that can be really helpful for many reasons. And then just noticing your patterns of eating. I think that, again, there's a lot of things that we don't notice anymore. And noticing simple things can be really helpful.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. Wonderful challenges. I think there's like a lot of wisdom in the simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
So engage your senses, slow down, and engage your senses with what you're eating. Notice, slow down. Beautiful. Awesome, Michelle. Well, thanks so much for being on the Nature Unplugged podcast. We'd love to have you back on. Cool. Any final words or anything before we wrap it up?
I can't think of anything except for get outside more.
Get outside more. Well said. Well said. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning into the Nature Unplugged podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, basically anywhere you want to get a podcast, it's there. Be sure and check out www.natureunplugged for more information and resources to help get you outside and for healthy boundaries with technology. Awesome. Until next time, we will catch you later. All right. Thanks, Michelle.